Good afternoon, everyone. Hope you're all well. We found a microphone, so hopefully the audio should be a bit better. I watched a video, a interview the other day, and it was on a channel called First Round TV. I believe this is Darren Barker's kind of YouTube channel. He's had Johnny Fisher on there so far. There's not many episodes yet. It's quite new, but he had a at-length, in-depth conversation with Conor Benn on there. Quite recently. It's got, like I say, First Round TV. Go and check it out. Go give it a look. Now, I know Darren Barker gets a bit of stick for his commentary by a lot of people, but I don't mind Darren Barker. I think Darren Barker's an all right kind of guy. And he had an interview on there with Conor Benn. And it was an at-length interview. It was very frank, very in-depth. And I don't know if you remember a long while ago, first off, let me preface this with the Conor Benn still hasn't proved his innocence via the 10,000 page dossier, whatever it is. So he still hasn't proved his innocence on paper to any of us at this point. But I don't know if you guys remember, quite a while ago, Simon Jordan said he had had a sit down with Conor Benn, and although at that point, again, Simon Jordan hadn't seen any concrete evidence of Conor Benn's innocence. He said after the sit down with him and talking to him at length, he was of the opinion of he found it hard to believe, or he found Conor Benn's sincerity enough to make him doubt that Conor Benn was dirty, and he kind of swayed towards the belief that maybe Conor Benn was telling the truth after he'd had this sort of sit down with him in this conversation at length. And I must admit, and I urge you all to, before you judge it, and before you judge him, and before you judge what I'm saying, go and give this a watch for yourself. Go give it a look. First Round TV, Darren Barker talks to Conor Benn. Now, yes, I know Darren Barker is also a Tony Sims man. So I know there is that connection, and I know there is that, all right, there might be an allegiance, and you could say there's some bias there. Okay, I get all that. But in the interview, when you listen to Conor Benn, and a couple of other things first of all, let's just get out of the way. Like, you know, a lot of us have we've sort of maybe accused Conor Benn of dressing himself up as sort of being a fake roadman, this, that, and the other, and sort of playing sort of a plastic gangster type character type deal. That's the sort of persona that comes across. But he quite openly says in this interview that he's not from that. He is from a privileged background. He wasn't sort of in this world at all. He wasn't immersed in that at all, especially not while he was in Australia. And he said, I come from privilege, I come from money. And he's never hidden the fact that he says, you know, in the very early days, there are many a times where he turned to Tony Sims and even asked himself the question, am I cut out for this? Am I actually a fighter? He's fighting for me. And he doubted himself quite heavily at times, and he's quite frank and open about this, of the fact that he is from privileged background. He's not from the street. He's not entered boxing as a way to lift him out of poverty and a life of crime. Couldn't be any further from the truth. He had a great upbringing. He had a great family. He had all the sort of, you know, financial blessings that a privileged youth gives you. So he had all that, and he was sort of more made fighter than born a fighter, although there's going to be a certain amount of that in his DNA coming from, you know, the lineage that he does come from. But he does freely admit that he isn't from that, and he did question whether it was for him at all. And along with many other things, he says that when he moved to this country, he shared a house with Nathan Gorman and a few others, the couple of foreign lads who were in that house. He didn't understand the language. He didn't understand the lingo coming from Australia. He'd only spent a very small amount of time here, sort of on trips, never lived here, but he came over here to pursue his professional career. He'd only had a couple of sort of amateur non-recorded fights in Australia. But when he gets onto the subject of the clomiphene and the PED scandal, when you do listen to him at length, And we can talk about how it was handled, how he handled it, and he himself admits he didn't handle it perfectly. But I kind of understand the very me against the world attitude he had when you believe you've been accused of something that you know you're not guilty of, and the anger and frustration that can cause. And like I said before, I can only urge you to go and watch this. And because there are a ton of Conor Benn haters out there, and they hate him for the fact that A, the way he portrays himself, and B, obviously popping for a banned substance. But I've always said that he has yet to prove his innocence, but I've always quite liked Conor Benn. Yes, he does come across, and he's an easy target if you take the way sort of he'll step and challenge people and this, that, and the other. We're probably not having the credentials or the record or the standing yet to demand those fights, but nonetheless, he'll go up in front of these people anyway, and it could come across not very likeable. But when you listen to him at length talk about the PED thing, when you listen to him say that he basically spent over £1 million of his own money to prove his innocence, and he says in the interview that essentially he's spending his son's money and his children's money and his family's money, and he says, why would I? It was a very hard thing to do. He says, this is what he says, even though I knew I didn't do this, I knew I was clean, I knew I didn't put this in my body, but I've gambled £1 million of my family's money and my children's money to prove my innocence, flying scientists around the world and this, that, and the other to prove. And he also talks about how around that time there was a lot of other sort of athletes and fighters that popped for clomiphene, and a lot of them that were, or from what he kind of says, were innocent, and innocent for the same reasons that he was found innocent by the scientists. Although, again, and I stress, and the caveat is we don't know because we haven't had this proof yet. We haven't seen the dossiers. But the point is, just listen to Conor Benn and listen to him at depth, and listen to the emotion. I've been around a lot of characters in my life and a lot of good liars, and it's hard to, as Simon Jordan said, it's hard to not, and maybe I'm wrong, maybe I'm naive, I don't think I am, but it's hard to believe Conor Benn was guilty, knowingly guilty, when you hear him sort of how emotional he is when he talks about it, and you hear the lengths that he's gone through to try and clear his name. And let's remember, the WBC did give him a perfectly good out. They did give him a through their own sort of testing program, that it was there because of eggs, and it was there because of this and there because of that. And he could have took that out if he wanted to. Let's not remember that. He could have jumped on that and took that. But even when offered that, he said, fucking no. No, it wasn't that either. It's not in there. It's not in there. So, am I still yet to be convinced that was not in his system? Yes, I am, because I haven't seen the evidence yet. But where do I stand on, do I think he was knowingly take a banned substance? Now, I've also made a video of this length before now. Clomiphene is a PCT drug. It's a post-psychotherapy drug. It's a drug you would take after using a course of an anabolic, a potent anabolic, which is seriously going to adjust your hormone levels. A PCT drug is what's used to bring your levels back to where they should be. I won't go into the intricacies and the technicalities of that. I've done that before, so we don't need to. But clomiphene essentially is not used as a performance enhancer. So that was one weird thing to be caught for, unless in fact he was doing a course of anabolics before that. But if we're looking at a course of anabolics and then a course of PCT, we're talking about quite an extensive time period, and he did pass other tests within these time periods. So essentially, like I said, I'm not saying Conor Benn is indisputably innocent, but what I am saying is, when you listen to the story at depth, and when you listen how emotional he is about it, and when you listen to how much money he's tried to invest on trying to prove his innocence, and apparently he has, even though, as again I say, we have no proof of that, you do come out with the impression of, you do find it hard to believe that this guy is lying and making this up, because like I said, I've been around a lot of liars, and if he's lying, he's very, very good. He is very, very good. But like I said, before you pass judgment on this video or what I'm saying, or Conor Benn, please, I just go and urge you to go and watch. It's over an hour and a half, maybe 2 hours long. So it is a very at-length interview. But yeah, like I said, I'll just go and urge you to watch it, because you know, I've never disliked Conor Benn. When Conor Benn is not doing the shouty stuff and all that, I find him a perfectly likeable individual. And I was a big fan of his progress. I've made videos of him as he was coming through, and there was a period where he made huge leaps and bounds in sort of technical ability and his performance. You know, and a lot of people will say that's down to performance enhancing drugs. Listen, performance enhancing drugs don't make you technically a better fighter, for one. But yeah, like I said, he puts over a very convincing case and a very convincing argument, and the way in which he talks about it, and you can see the emotion that's there. You do find it hard to think this man is a liar, if that makes sense. But as I said, I urge you to go and watch it. Go and give it a watch. Give it a watch. Let me know. Leave it in the comments, and I'll see you all soon.
Let's go tottering around the ring.